Hi, welcome to Sri Lanka 2048, where we talk about creating a more livable, sustainable future for all of us. The business sector is said to be the engine of growth, but can this engine keep running and running without consideration for the impacts it creates for the society, for environment, for all of us? Or should business become more environmentally conscious in response to the growing environmental awareness worldwide? We are going to talk about that today with representatives from business, government, civil society and other sectors. I would like to basically start off with our panel by posing one key question: why should business care about the environment? Professor Kottagama.
Thank you, Nalak. I think you are asking somebody who is not a businessman at all. So, to me business must be responding to the environment if it is to survive in the environment, very simple to me. So, whether you want to make it complicated in the sense of how you achieve your business and all that written off, any activity in the environment needs to take to consideration that you are doing it in the environment, and it must be within the framework of those environmental ethics and rules and regulations and the norms that the environment has. Some of us may not know what it is, some may know something about it, the others think they know a lot about it. So, if you are going to use all of those things together, the business must, to me, be acceptable to the environment and be within the norms of the environment.
Let's define things a bit. When we say environment, what do we mean here?
To me, the environment has fundamentally three components as of today. We can start arguing about it and define it according to the textbook and so on and so forth, but in current society and in today, I believe there are three components, which is the natural environment which is around us somewhere. The second environment is what we have structured and built. So, I call it the structured environment. We are in one of that situations. This is all structured, this is all what we have. The third one is what we make us be, which I call the theoretical environment, the economics, the business, if you want to call, how it is run, families, how we manage ourselves, our cultures, our education, our background. All these three elements are the fundamental components of the present environment to be able to understand if you want to make a change and become what different from what you are today. So, that is how I look at the environment.
Okay. Renton, business is diverse. How do we relate such a diverse sector to the environment that Professor Kottagama just explained to us?
Well, conserving and even protecting in this context of the environment today is no longer a nice thing to do. It is a must do, because it is all about our very own survival. And then on the other hand, for business, customer demands that we do things that are meaningful, so that they could feel good, because it is all around. In fact, now today supermarkets in Europe even count the CO2, amount of CO2 that has come in, bringing the fruits from different places.
The food miles.
The food miles. And then in the travel field where I am, there is travel guilt coming in. People don't want to travel long haul anymore. Most of them, I am not saying all, but some of them, they feel that when they travel long haul, they emit more carbon into the atmosphere. So, therefore, they would rather travel close by, and that affects destinations like Sri Lanka. So, there is more than one reason as to why we should, and I think it is now customer driven. It is no longer corporate social responsibility only, it is more than that. It is a need because the customer wants us to do that. Recently, I was at an event where the chairman of the Marriott group of hotels worldwide said that the customers are indeed asking us what the destinations, what their properties stand for. And therefore, it is he said that it is no longer a nice thing, but a mandatory thing that corporates must do.
So, it is not a choice, it is an imperative. Dilhan, do you agree?
It is.
Absolutely. When you talk about business, business is you and I, it consists of people, and in that sense business depends on the environment, depends on the economy, depends on society, politics, etc. It is all interrelated. Now, the current crisis in the environment caused by misuse or perhaps mismanagement is the greatest threat to business. So, if business does not deal with it, and bring it down to a level where you're talking about individuals interacting with the environment. And you don't need to go very far to see how individuals should interact with the environment in a sustainable way. You just need to go to some of the rural areas of Sri Lanka. You will see business, people coexisting with the environment in perfect symbiosis. So when you talk about business, I think we should not consider it some sort of alien object. It is very much a part of our society, part of our culture and so on. And it is individuals like you and I who make up those businesses, and we absolutely must take into consideration what our environment needs.
But I have also seen that there is another perception where, for example, cartoonists caricaturize businessmen as necessarily pot-bellied, necessarily evil and polluting. How do you respond to this perception?
I'm working on my pot belly. But as for that perception, it is absolutely correct. I don't know, the origin I think was the movie Casablanca, where they portrayed this businessman as such, this stereotype that is built up. It is absolutely justified. So the vision that I just mentioned, it's possibly a little bit utopian in that respect. It's a question of the imperative. Do you go for business for the purpose of profit alone, or do you go for business as a sustainable enterprise within society? So I'm not saying that all business is clean and sustainable, but I'm just enunciating a vision of what business should be. Without sustainability, business or anyone, even an individual, becomes a parasite. I don't think any of us wants to be that.
Jeevani, when Sri Lankan business is trying to expand overseas and are trying to export, why should they care about the environment?
Well, we have experienced, as from the EDB, we are an export promotion agency, and we have many contacts with the buyers and foreign organizations. So what in the recent past, say for the last 2-3 years, they've been demanding more environmentally friendly products from Sri Lankan manufacturers, and they keep asking us, can you introduce us to environmentally friendly factories, green factories. So we have communicated this message to the Sri Lankan manufacturers, but we still feel there's a lack of awareness among the Sri Lankan companies, and for that purpose we have tied up with various agencies in Sri Lanka to promote this concept of manufacturing environmentally friendly products to meet the buyers' demands.
But I mean, look at the average businessman who's struggling to contain production costs and keep the workforce happy. And if they are asked to be environmentally compliant to such an extent, is it an eye of the needle that they are being asked to get through?
Actually, finally, by being environmentally friendly, it has proved that you can come down on the costs.
You can cut down on costs.
You can cut down on costs.
Do you agree?
And it is a better marketing tool. You might get a better price on the other hand for having produced an environmentally friendly product.
Okay.
Can I say something now? I really I agree. Some businesses got into the conserving the environment not because of the goodness in doing that, but because they found that they could indeed save costs. There are many examples in the travel and tourism industry where they first got into it, and because they were able to save energy costs and certain other costs, and even human resources, I mean, like say, were more efficient used, and therefore, they found that it was, it was also not only a nice thing to do, but also, something that helped them with the bottom line.
So survival imperatives, profit motive, all this is playing a part. What would you say? Are there discordant views in this audience? I mean, is this all economic survival for business? And when environment ceases to be a factor, deciding factor, will it pass? Is this a fad? What do you think?
In fact, we depend on the environment. As Professor Kotakama said, business is operating within the environment. We are not operating outside the environment. So obviously, all the resources that we get are from the environment. And as it was discussed, when you take the resources efficiently, the word efficient and productivity and efficiency, all these things have come in to minimize the cost. So what's the other effect of it? The other side of the coin is that when you minimize, when you are trying to make your operations efficient, by doing the minimum, your planning your activities in such a way that you have the minimum impact on the environment. So obviously your cost on this side is reduced, and on the other side the impact on the environment is reduced. Adverse impacts are reduced. So it's I don't think we can disagree on that. Actually, it is not a fad. It's a fact of life.
It's a fact of life. You have another view.
In introducing systems on business and environment, they call it that we should have win-win situation, in the sense that whatever environmentally that we want to do should be acceptable by the end product as well. Because like I'm into solar energy. Now if someone wants to use solar energy, it is expensive. But can your product, end product, could be sold at that taking that cost into an effect, you know. So you can introduce, you can talk about it very much, but in any way it's called win-win situation in climate change world. You have to have win-win situation on economically viable to be in the product line. So.
Economically viable, and we need to address all those factors, yes. which is what we are going to explore in some depth and detail in the next round when we come back after this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Sri Lanka 2048 today, we are talking about business and the environment. All businesses, big or small, need resources and energy to operate. They extract this or take it from the environment, and often they create an impact in the form of waste and other outputs. Now, how can business minimize their footprint, their impact on the environment as they go about doing their products or services? This is the big challenge. Now, we are going to first look at how a small business has managed to turn a waste weed into a resource for its own operations, and then we come back to our panel.
This waterway is filled with water hyacinth, or Japan jabara, scientifically known as Iconia crassipus. It's a fast-spreading, invasive waterweed that clogs waterways. To many, water hyacinth is a nuisance, but to Ashley Mendes, it's a resource to be used. He is a small businessman in Vattala who makes recycled paper and ornamental paper from natural fibers. Japan jabara is one such natural fiber, but to make paper from its fiber, he needs to collect a large volume of plant stems. First, these stems are cut into small pieces and dried in the sun. Next, they are put in caustic soda to soften and separate fibers. Afterwards, they are washed in water with alum to neutralize acidity before releasing the water into the environment. Then the pieces go through a beating machine from where they emerge as a brown pulp. The pulp and water is then moved to a paper-making vat. Once the vat is lifted from water, the pulp settles at the bottom. It's now called wet paper and is couched onto a cotton cloth. After collecting 20 to 30 wet papers, the whole stack is pressed to remove the water. Then the paper is hung to dry. Once completely dry, it is pressed inside this machine that smoothens the surface. This is called calendering. The process is similar to recycled paper making, but it's not easy to find the right raw material.
The canal behind my factory was full of Iconia, and it had a very good growth. The stem was bigger than the Iconia in other areas. So we started plucking Iconia from there, but later we found out that there are a lot of dirt coming from small shanties around the area. So now my laborers do not want to get into the water to pick Iconia. So it is a difficult thing for me to find Iconia. So I have to bring Iconia from a distance away from this.
For these reasons, it costs Ashley more to produce paper from water hyacinth, and he is compelled to charge a higher price than for recycled paper. Ashley's clients are mainly from the hotel and tourism industry. If demand is stable, he would like to make more paper products from water hyacinth.
Recently, because of the country's situations, the hotels had a hard time, and sometimes we also had indirectly that problem came to us, because when we supply things to a hotel and they were not able to pay us back because their hotels were idling without customers.
This is a small effort that both removes an invasive waterweed and makes money from it. But when they innovate, small businessmen like Ashley have to face various environmental, market and regulatory challenges.
Well, that's a small industry trying to turn a weed into its own raw material. There was a reference to the travel industry, Renton. Can I ask you, majority of our businesses are small or medium industries. Can they be environmentally friendly, given the constraints that they operate in?
Of course, indeed. You know, I think this is the time that we can, I mean, they are looking at options. I must tell you a story. Recently, I was in a little Californian town, which is a tourist center of the US. And to my surprise, I found a store full of elephant dung paper products. That store had a promotion right out front. Sri Lankan elephant dung products was there, and I was very happy. And it is not only the fact that, you know, our products that are made out of these natural products that are being sold out there, but also the promotional value that we get. So some of the now for the gentleman that we saw, you know, he could provide also an export product, and I'm sure you know, there are others who are also looking at these areas. Now these are things that we should encourage, because they do help us promote the country as well.
Professor Kottagam?
Yeah, I want to turn it around. See, this is one of the issues. If you look at the background to that whole story of paper making, you're only doing a business. You are making use of an opportunity and making money.
Yeah.
So my issue is this. That's why I said, you know, even though Ravi said it is not a fad, to me sometimes what the business community is doing today is basically a fad for the moment, right? That's what they are really doing. Sometime down the line it might be not environment but something else, and they will turn around to that. Inevitable, of course. But why? And see the issue, it said caustic soda was used to soften it and then put some alum, and where does it go? You see, that is the issue, right? To be environmental conscious is not just only to do something with what is waste. It is also to do with the whole process. You see, we are very good at promoting and saying we have done something for the environment by using waste or alternatives and all of these things, but we forget the process. I think the process is also very important to ensure that your product is environmentally friendly, not just only the product. So I am happy about that person using weeds for getting rid of the weeds and all of that, but then I am unhappy because there was nothing to say what was happening to that alum based caustic thing that was being thrown out. He said just to neutralize, but still you are releasing a chemical which may still be as worst as that person refusing to get into the canal to pick up the that is much better, because after all it is our own waste, not some chemical waste, right? But so you see the process there is that is what I am concerned. You know, these are very good, but if you do not take into consideration your process of production, then the whole story is not complete.
So we have this point here that a deeper, more thorough understanding is needed. You have a comment or a question?
This is where we see when we start a factory in any sector in Sri Lanka, we'll have to start with the preliminary study of what we are going to do with the environment or economy or politics or whatever it is. So we have several sectors where we can categorize and identify where we are going, anything doing wrong or right. So those sort of sectors are freely available. We'll have to find out where we are going to do it and how we are going to find it. So for an example, we can see the central environmental authorities there. So when we are starting a business, we can have understanding how they are going to do it or demarcate their products. So I think these sort of things, the awareness should be start with the people where they are going to start their products.
So we need more awareness, we need more know-how, and that advice coming from the sources of that information. You have a comment?
Yeah, issue of environmental degradation has been there for a while, and all parties involved don't have the required knowledge. Some continue to do it, some have just picked up knowledge, some are gaining knowledge. So I think when you look at the whole thing, first and foremost, I think we have to make awareness among all people, not only just one sector or two sector, or accidentally somebody doing something is not the right thing. I think basic lack of awareness along with responsibility is needed to be done. Sometimes even the awareness is there, but people are not taking it very seriously.
They lack the motivation, perhaps?
They lack the motivation, they lack responsibility, they are selfish. All these things are there. So it's a whole social system that we need to get going if we want to survive a little longer.
Okay. We have a comment over there, sir.
To start with, for the cost of inputs have gone up so much, cost of energy has gone up so much on one side, so that you have to go towards the principles of cleaner production to reduce the amount of inputs that you do. The concept of environmental protection and what the CEA does, there are going to be a major change. All what have been required up to now is to make sure the concentration of your emissions are controlled. Unfortunately, it's only water now, not the solid waste or the air. But the legislation is on the way to make sure that you pay for the total quantity. A large amount of dilute emissions is not going to be the measure. It will be how much, and you will have to pay by the quantity that is going to be.
Okay.
So again, a reason that you have to go in that direction.
Yes. The cleaner production was mentioned. Now, is this know-how available to the average SME?
I think really we need to have more proactivity both from the scientific community as well as from the business community in order to seek the right marriage between them. Because for far too long we have been working in compartments. So, when you talk about cleaner production, making it available, making the technology, the know-how, the scientific facts known to the SMEs, is very necessary, because it is not just the lab research. There had been a movement, some time ago to get the scientific community involved in business, but I think not enough has been done in this area.
Would the scientist agree?
Yeah, I think I agree with Renton wholeheartedly, because you see, there is a distancing between the industry and the academic. We have tried hard and it is ongoing. There is a lot of closeness now compared to what it was. So that's my background that I am saying, when I say it's a fad and when all I say is, you see, I come back with 30 years of environmentalism and not academic, not business. So to me, I have seen a transition. Those who told me openly with the state itself saying this is too much for you, this is not where the country should be going, have now turned around to say we are the ones who are doing this. So I am very happy. I am sitting here being very happy, having fought against the system, having been blackguarded by the system, telling them that you are trying to cut our profits down, you are trying to go against our industries in this country.
You've been a man ahead of your time.
Probably, I don't know. If
March
that is
for conservation in the late 70s.
If that's what you want to say.
Yes.
But you see, therefore, like what was just said, it's not a fad because it is your survival. But my concern is not only there. We are talking of 2042, right? You can do well today, right? But every one of the actions that we have done 30 years ago was done with the same idea. That is what we must not forget, right? How futuristic are we when we are doing the same business, right? We are talking of the present, but as an environmentalist, I see much further than the present. I always see the future in front of me. So that may be what you said, I was ahead of time. That is what we need to forget, not forget, because now we have a better experience which we never had in the history of humankind in business or any activity.
Okay, we are talking about the next generation. Do businesses think in terms of the next generation? You have a comment?
It's a complicated, a very complex issue. Businesses are trying to survive in a very difficult environment. A lot of pressure in terms of the bottom line, have to earn the money at the end of the day. So naturally, businesses tend to have that focus in mind. But it is also a leadership issue, I think. I think very much an individual leadership issue. At the same time, we live in a world that is, by the fact of us surviving in this world, living in this world, we are creating what's called entropy. You know, it's a basic law. We are creating more and more disorder. So that is a fundamental truth that we have to live with. So how do we work towards creating minimal damage in this process, rather than we have to accept the fact that we are creating damage.
Some impact is unavoidable. That's what you're saying.
Totally unavoidable.
We need values, we need ethics, we need good leadership. We keep hearing about the bottom line. And when we come back after the break, we'll explore what bottom line means to responsible business. Stay with us. Welcome back to Sri Lanka 2048, where we are talking about business and the environment today. Before our break, we heard the word bottom line, and we've also heard the term CSR, corporate social responsibility, which is defined as the business commitment to behave ethically and to contribute to the welfare of workers, local community and society at large. That's a broad definition of CSR. Today, in this round, we are going to talk about how CSR happens in the Sri Lankan context and where environment comes in. But before that, let's take a look at this example of an environmental CSR.
උණු බාල්දියට දානවා නිසා ඒක එතනින්ම යනවනේ ඒක ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැනේ නේ.
ඉතින් කොහෙට හරි දාවොත් ඒක අමතක වෙලාම තියෙනවා කොතන හරි ඒක සමහරවිට පස්සේ අස් කරනකොට ඒක ලුණු බැඳිලා මොන හරි වෙලා ඉතින් කුණු වලට තමයි යන්නේ. ඉතින් දානවනේ එක්ක මොන හරි පස්සේ යට කළා හරි ඒ වගේ දාන්න ඕනේ. ගෙදර තියාගෙන ඉන්නවා ලාච්චු උඩ හරි දාගෙන ඉතින් ඕක.
එච්චර දියුණු තාක්ෂණයක් තාම ලංකාවේ නැහැ නේද ඒව විනාශ කරන්න හොයාගෙන.
බැටරියක් විසික් කරනවා කියන්නේ ඉතින් අපේ එක්කගේ ගේවත්තේ තමයි කොතනයි දාන්නේ.
The mobile phone has become an indispensable item today. But most of us don't know what to do with phone batteries or even phones that have reached the end of their useful lifespan. Do we keep them in a drawer, throw them into a trash can, or bury in our garden? Old, unusable mobile phones, batteries, and accessories are collectively called M-waste. If discarded carelessly, they can release toxic material harmful to our health and the environment. So, just how do we handle their disposal? There is finally a solution. We can now return used mobile phones, batteries, and accessories to Dialog Telecom. This Take Back initiative was launched in December 2007. You can now take your old mobile phones and accessories to any nearby Dialog arcade and hand them over. The old phones and batteries thus collected are stored safely until they are sent out of the country for recycling. Though launched only recently, the public response to the initiative has been encouraging. The collection that started with a dozen or so used phones had increased to over 1,000 within just 4 months.
CSR and the environment. Last year, IUCN and the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce carried out a survey of Sri Lankan companies engaged in CSR, and it revealed that a significant number of the surveyed companies did indeed have active CSR policies and practice. And 53%, slightly over half of them, had environmental components in their CSR. So, this is the dimension in CSR that we are going to talk about in this round. We have the representative of the company responsible for the example we just saw. Would you like to tell us after a few months of practice where we are now with the take back?
In terms of absolute numbers, we've exceeded 10,000 phones.
In about 6 months?
In about 6 months since December. There is a certain element of inertia in terms of the public actually bringing phones back to us.
Why?
It could be a cultural sentiment. I mean, I think Sri Lankans do have a way of keeping old things with them for sentimental value. The mobile phone could be one of those pieces of equipment as well. But it's encouraging. I mean, the numbers have been increasing, and since the last 3-4 months, we've been getting larger numbers. I think it also has got to do with awareness. I think a lot of people still don't know that we can dispose of our phones and batteries through the arcades of dialogue. But it's encouraging. The progress has been quite encouraging.
Thank you. Let me turn to Dilhan. Yours is a family-owned Sri Lankan multinational company. How do you look at CSR? What does CSR mean to you, to your company?
I think firstly, CSR is one of the most abused concepts in existence, because in most cases, the CSR done is disproportionate to the damage done by the entity. But having said that, we saw an excellent example here, and there are many others. But it leads to the purpose of business, and I think the point that Professor Kotagama made is very pertinent here, because business, speaking very frankly, not from as our family business, but generally, would like the environment to be a fad. And going back to ethics, it is all motivated by the fact that it is a purchasing factor. It is a, you could say, a factor behind the decision-making process in the supermarket or wherever the business sells their product, because at the end of the day, the business of business is profit. Now, going into that, you need to understand that we need to try to change that concept, because this is all driven by the stock market. Of course, I'm not referring to small businesses that Lalit mentioned. It's an entirely different paradigm. But if you read a wonderful book by Professor Kaplan, a Canadian professor, who talks about the pathological pursuit of power. Since the 1700s, when you divorced ownership and operation of a business, you come to a situation where you have owners who are thirsty ever increasingly for profit, and you get an operating entity that has to deliver that profit. So in that scenario, we will never get the kind of public-private or scientific-private sector partnership that is desirable, that we need to deal with this issue.
It's the shareholders over the stakeholders.
Exactly. But the issue is, the shareholders are you and I. It's a question of awareness, education, and trying to work through that channel. Otherwise, business becomes this hydra-headed evil entity that is simply, look at the average lifespan of a CEO in Europe. I read an article in, this was in the UK, in 2006, it was 1.5 years. So deliver profit or get out. So I don't think you can blame the corporate entity in itself, but you need to look behind it and try to understand what are the driving forces behind that and try to influence that.
So is CSR then greenwashing or public relations? Is there something deeper, more meaningful? Panel?
Well, I don't know. I have been very skeptical, like what Dilhan just said, you know. When I was first asked for some discussion or talk to say something about CSR on environment, I said, where were you all these years? That's not my simple answer, question I asked them. So they said, well, if you permit me to tell that, I will come and talk. If not, I don't want to be in your discussion, because it might be very embarrassing for you. That is really the problem.
Okay.
Right.
Where were you all these years?
CSR, I think there is the most misunderstood word, you know, actually within the business community. One is during business training, whether you are in school or in a university or a higher institute, you never get any idea about the environment or the impacts or the corporate responsibility. You know, the scientific community is one and the business community is one. Business, the business of business is business. Unfortunately, it is misinterpreted in this manner. That is, many people feel that CSR is just philanthropy. You do something and feel good about it and blow your trumpet so the rest of the world knows.
And do it only in the good times.
That's right, that's right. But actually real CSR is like what Dialogue is doing, and of course some of us are doing it, is involvement. Is really involvement. That is, I mean, if you really do it that way, then it gives you all the possible benefits.
Okay, over there.
Some time ago, I feel that CSR activity was done by most as a fashionable thing. It was nice to be involved, especially when it comes to conservational things. Sustainability of your business totally depends on how environmentally responsible you are. And the more you are on that, if business of business is business, you know, sustainability is utmost. And to maintain that sustainability, you have to be very conscious of your environment. And if you're looking at also on the CSR and a part of it being ecotourism, that's again another term which is very much misunderstood and abused. People think lots of things are ecotourism, but without really fundamentally understanding what that is. So these are things where, again, I suppose with the help of Renton and the Tourist Board, we can create the necessary awareness where people are then the genuine people and genuine companies which has the passion are directed to be involved in the right type of ecotourism and CSR activity.
Okay, so we need conceptual clarity, we need focus, and we need to keep talking to raise awareness.
We were looking at 2048 Sri Lanka, and I think Sri Lanka has an opportunity here. I think in that sense, if you look at the developed world, you know, they've probably made a few mistakes along the way in getting there. And I think if we are on that road, on the same road of, you know, moving towards being a developed nation, we are working, all businesses are working within a developing context. I think we can learn from the mistakes that some of these countries have made, the businesses have made, and sort of rectify them before we get to 2048.
Our own ethos, you know, our own culture had a lot of conservatory practices, even in the businesses that we did. I mean, no matter, they were not large as they are now. Now, I know that there are companies, conglomerates that have CSR departments or sections for CSR. I believe that CSR should be a culture within an organization, and you mentioned ecotourism. I believe that, like you said, that it must be an interactive process, and sometimes the community, you know, that really should be involved in all these initiatives are not, you know, are not there because it's the fad that comes out. Like Professor said earlier, I think we need to integrate a lot of aspects, not just you know, the business itself, but bringing in, and also how you evolve it. You know, it's not something that you can go and plant. I mean, you can't create an eco resort in that sense without having it come from the very bottom, you know.
So you need a process. We have two gentlemen waiting here to say something for the past few minutes.
Okay, we have been following an old Western paradigm for the last 500 years of a not looking at things in a systems way. So we don't have this cause and effect in the business world. That concept doesn't come in at all. So this disconnect is what's creating all the problem. Like Dilhan said, in terms of how the business is created, the fact that there's a limited liability company shows that somebody can hide behind the law and do anything he or she wants to make ends meet, and the money becomes the god that we are following now. So I think we need to, if we go back to our Eastern principles where we respect nature, we believe that we are part of one system, and I think that's where we have to go back to our education, and that's where we have to go back to educating young people in terms of leadership. And if we start that now, I think maybe in 2-3 generations we may be able to save the planet.
So we need to take a break now, but when we come back, we come back to the point, can business find opportunities in the new emerging environmental consciousness? Stay with us. Welcome back to Sri Lanka 2048. We are talking about business and the environment. The environmental regulations and standards are tightening worldwide. This can be a challenge to business. It can also mean new business opportunities. How can we turn the challenge into opportunities? This is what we will explore in this round. What are the new business areas that are opening up as a result of more people, more consumers becoming environmentally conscious and sensitive? Can we begin with you, Jeevani? What does it mean for the overseas markets?
Yes, particularly the overseas buyers are demanding environmentally friendly products, as I said earlier, and the market for this kind of products, if you take one for example, the certified timber products, the world demand is about $20 billion US. that is only just I think 6% of the world market for timber based products. And in Sri Lanka, we have got the services of the IUCN to carry out this project to popularize the management of good forest and use the timber under certified forestry stewardship certified council certification, and get the exporters to use that timber for the manufacture of their products and export. So, presently there are about 15 companies who have joined us on this project to follow the good principles of producing environmentally friendly products. And the other example would be the in the apparel industry, where most of the companies are now following the world responsible apparel manufacturing systems, and more than nearly 50 companies are following the good management principles, because the buyers demand this certification. Even for timber products, they demand the label.
Okay, this is for existing industries to become more
Exactly,
compliant.
yes.
But what about totally new lines of business opening up as a result of environmental consciousness?
Yes, like organic food.
Yes.
Presently we export about 20 million US dollars worth of organic products from Sri Lanka, and more companies are now getting into that line of business. Earlier it was only about 10, now it's increasing from 20 to 30 companies. So, new small companies like plantations, especially in the spices sector, the organic fruits, more and more smaller companies are also now engaging in producing organic products.
And you feel that's the growth area?
Yes.
Okay. Is this again a fad?
If you are thinking futuristic, you have to think of the turning processes. It is a turning process. People are becoming more environmental conscious, and they are going to lesser and lesser artificial or chemical based products and things of that nature. So, the need to certify timber, which was started way back in the 90s, but again that is one point I must tell you where I got really hammered, because we said that we should be looking at what we are sending out, and now I am happy that it is being said, but I want to put something else. See, as Sri Lanka, what is it that we can offer to the future? I think that is very important in this business world, because otherwise we just only try to respond to the outside world. You know, you want us, we will give you this, right, and for that we will do this, that and the other.
So, how can we be proactive?
Let us look at it the other way around, right. What do we have as an asset? One of the biggest assets that we have is the biological diversity, the culture, and that those two are very important. So, Renton will agree with me that we have the culture, which the smiling people of Sri Lanka is something that we can market anywhere at any time. So, that is something that we have to think
about. We have
the
chief marketing officer here.
Right. So, the next one is the biological diversity. Now, what about all the wild fruits that we have? Keeping the wildness, now where is the dung and the things? I do not even see. Those days at least I used to eat something at the parliament, now that it become very high security, you can't do that also. But you see these, like think about all the fruits that we have.
There was a recent song, Apple walata baya wela jambu narang hangila.
Right. So, those are the future, right. So, we should start thinking of the community, the business community must start thinking of a Sri Lankan product which is unique in the world and it can be given to them.
Do you want to react quickly?
I think the opportunity lies in a lease of life by adapting. It's a question of whether it is genuine adaptation or demonstrative adaptation.
Yeah. So, we need to adapt. We have a number of questions and comments from the audience. Can we begin with you, sir, at the back?
I come from the tea industry. We started a program where about 2 years back, we converted all our petroleum fired dryers to a renewable source, namely fuel wood. So today our company doesn't hardly use diesel to dry the teas. So I would like to share with Professor that it was not a fad. It is something that we are very committed and we can sustain it. And I think Sri Lanka has a great opportunity to take to the world and say, look, Sri Lankan tea is today even being produced in an extremely environmental manner, and we should be able to get a niche market for this. I think these are opportunities that this country can take overseas.
You see, I am happy to hear that you are going back to fuel. You know, I come from a village. During my kid days, when I went to school in the hill country, I used to go through a number of factories which were using wood for drying the tea leaves, using mini hydro for running the factories, but why did we go out of that?
Yes.
You see, we went out of it to diesel and we went out to oil and electricity because it was cheap, right, and now we come back. That is why I call it a fad. You see, the things can change that way, right. So, one must be very conscious of what you are doing and be realistic to continue to do it forever.
Thank you. Thank you. We need to wind up now. Is it a fad? Is it going beyond a fad? Whatever the divergent views in this debate have been, one thing is clear: environment is adding new pressures on all businesses, large and small, and responding to that can open up new opportunities to all business if they position themselves correctly. And at the end of the day, there can be no trade on a dead planet, and I think business is beginning to heed that call. Thank you for joining us. Bye for now.